Hello and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Adi. Today, once again, I'm proud to present Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar, PVSM, AVSM, and VSM with his thoughts about a debate which has been raging across military circles. The debate is about maritime versus continental. Thank you, sir, for joining me this evening for an interesting discussion which is going to come up. And I think this is going to be the crux of how India should look forward towards its strategy to counter China.
Thanks for calling me over once again, Adi. It'll be a pleasure discussing this subject. There's a lot of views on whether India should be continentally oriented or maritime oriented.
So I'll open the subject with, I think, one of the basic questions. What is the big debate between maritime and continental which is brewing across in military circles today?
Yeah, a lot of people today of late, and I've heard saying, "Oh, we should look at the maritime domain more than the continental domain," and things like that. I'd like to highlight a few people's views, and I'll just show you a slide for that. Right? Right. Uh, these are the views which are normally expressed, and I call them great armchair strategists. Like I read somewhere, it says India's military doctrine is outdated, orthodox, and too continentally oriented, and neglects the maritime domain. Someone says the Indian Army's prevailing doctrine leaves the military with two main choices: do nothing or risk wars it cannot win. The Indian Army needs to rethink its use of force to meet today's new challenges. Now, I must ask, are there any new challenges besides Pakistan and PLA and the Indian Ocean region?
Not aware.
Right? Not, right. And he's talking of do nothing or risk wars it cannot win.
Mm.
This chap who's written this doesn't know our military history. We've beaten Pakistan black and blue from 47 to now at a time and place of its choosing every time. Okay. And then, barring 1962, we've given a bloody nose to PLA also. Okay. So there's no question of risking wars we cannot win. We've always won our wars. And this guy is American. He forgets that this great superpower has lost all its recent wars. America's wars, if you analyze, whether it's Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, they're all losing cases. So I think they have to rethink. Okay. And then, of course, India's obsession with continental strategies has yielded unflattering results. No secure border or deterrent stability. Therefore, it is high time that New Delhi shifted its almost exclusive focus from the continental space to the maritime space, stitching together a grand maritime strategy. I wanted to ask this guy why I showed this is absolute shooting in the air. Will our India putting together a grand maritime strategy prevent China or Pakistan from doing what they are doing? Will they stop fingering us in J&K? Will they stop coming to Doklam or building villages across at Langju? So many of us talk big without knowing the ground situation. And then someone says India's strategic challenges in the near future will be naval and not continental. I mean, again, look at our history. When has India ever been threatened through the seas? Ever since we have got independence, India has faced the threat on its land borders.
Correct, sir.
So, a lot of people have this confused thinking that we are old-fashioned and X, Y, Z, right? And I think they need to rethink thing, and we should have a balanced strategy. My thing is, it's neither continental nor maritime. We need to do what is in the best interest of the nation, right? Yeah. The next question.
So we normally, one of the things that I've noticed is the projection of maritime power. I mean, of course, what you're trying to say with what you've just shown us is that the projection of maritime power is something that we would want to have, and we would want to keep by our side for whatever reasons that we decide to. But it's not spoken about as much in India, although there's a balance that needs to be created between maritime power and stuff like that. There are statements like this which are coming out, but it's not really spoken about too freely and openly. Why is that?
Yeah, that's because India and many of these people don't understand our interests. What are our vital interests,
Hmm.
right? And every nation's strategy flows out from its vital interests, right? So we'll go back. Our vital interests are defined in the Constitution of India, which says in its preamble, secure all, it, you know, security to all citizens. That is protection
Yeah.
of the people.
Hmm.
And it guarantees the unity and integrity of the nation. That's a territory. So first people, territory second. That's there. That's your vital interest. Your strategy has to revolve around this. Okay, let's look at the threats which India faces. Based on the national interest, what are the threats? External aggression is from land, right? Pakistan or from China. And therefore, you need to protect your land borders and your coastline. It's not as if you don't have to protect your coastline. And your island territories, which are the red, this is Andaman Nicobar and Lakshadweep, and your sea lanes from external aggression. And way back, one of our prime ministers had said that our area of interest in the Indian Ocean region, right, comes from the Gulf of Aden to the Malacca Straits.
Hmm.
It's not as if our maritime interests are not defined. I mean, this slide puts everything in perspective. And our strategies have to be based on this. Okay. Now, when you look at it, when you say protect the people, you also have to protect the people internally, right?
Hmm.
As also the constitution, mind you, from terrorism, insurgency, and militancy. So these 3-4 things are immutable. You can't change. And your strategies have to revolve around them, right? So when you look at it holistically, today the threat is not from the seas. The threat is from the land, right?
Yes.
Your constitution says defend the people and the territory. So you have to have a strategy for the continent. Okay. The second part of it is the threat from the sea is almost non-existent, right? It is far away. That we'll discuss down the line. People will say, no, China will come and attack us here. We'll see that. But you have interests in the sea. So your continental domain caters for some vital national interests of protection. And your maritime domain caters for rise of India as it comes in the future. It is futuristic in nature, and I look at it in a very smaller way, or rather a little humorous way. When you have a polar bear sitting on top of your head, you can't go for a swim in the sea behind you, right? So when you have China sitting on top, you can't say, no, I'll go take a boat and go to Andaman Nicobar. So that's the thing, right? Okay. Now you look at it from a little more serious thing. Your adversaries are nuclear. You have a 2.5 front threat, which we all talk of daily.
Yes.
We should prepare for a 2.5 front war, and we should be prepared for that. That's what we talk, isn't it? Which is this 2.5 front? One is Pakistan, China, and the internal hybrid thing, CI and all that. Are we looking at a threat from the sea at all as a nation? We don't talk of it. If that was a threat, we should have spoken of a 3.5 front threat.
Hmm.
So,
Correct.
so your preparation, strategy, everything has to be based on that. I have not heard anyone talk of 3.5 front threat. Maritime interest, paramount, not threat.
Hmm.
Threat is to island nations, island territories, I agree. That too marginal,
Hmm.
right? Then have you considered the strategy from the enemy and the terrain? That's a major question.
Interesting.
See, strategy has three components. Any nation strategy has three components. It has it is all about the enemy, the environment or the terrain or the ground or the sea on which you're fighting,
Hmm.
and your own strategy based on your capabilities. Have we considered that? When you categorize all this, when you see, and strategy is not uh, it is not against, it's not a continental strategy or a maritime strategy is not an end by itself.
Hmm.
These both have to be complementary with each other against a nation to progress your interests, your aims. That's very important. People forget it. Okay. Then your strategy has to take this, what I said. Have you considered the effect on people who live on those borders? They're people, they're your land. You know, I take your mind back to 1962
Hmm.
when the Chinese had come down right up to they crossed Tawang, crossed Bomdila, they were at Rupa. And this side, further in Lohit Valley, they had come along the Walong axis, they had made a lot of ingress.
Hmm.
At that time, Jawaharlal Nehru made a statement that my heart weeps for the people of Assam. And after that, he was a broken man. Why? People matter. So the primacy of land and people who reside there doesn't go. Why are you doing border infrastructure today in those areas? If you don't do border infrastructure, those people will not look towards you. They
Hmm.
will start looking towards China. People matter at the end of the day. Land matters at the end of the day. But again, that doesn't mean you don't look at the sea. Okay? Yeah. Your next question.
Interesting. So basically, what you're advocating is a very, very crystal clear balance, which is maintained between both the areas. You're talking
Yeah.
about us being smart rather than, being
Then rather than being bullish about the
correct.
maritime. See, another question which, I mean, another angle to what you have said. Why have we not spoken of the maritime domain so far? There was no need for it till date.
Correct. Yeah. Agreed.
We were neither was the threat there or nor the interest there. See, there's another historical construct to this maritime business. In the last century, the seas were dominated by the Western powers. One. In the last century, the the sea domination and everything in the interests of nations and everything, the power centers were along the Atlantic.
Hmm.
It was USA and first Britain and then USA which dominated the other oceans. It is in this century that the power is shifting here. You're seeing a rising China, a rising US, a rising India, and in future probably a rising Indonesia and Australia. So the people who are competing for this space have gone up. It is no more America's prerogative
Hmm.
to dominate the seas. They've got competition. That is why the maritime orientation is changing. Earlier it was not there. Today it is there. All this competition is coming up, and hence the orientation is changing. Yeah. Next question. Sorry.
Sure, sir. I think that's a very interesting point. That the thought process previously, I think people just accepted the fact that the Americans were a great power in the seas and just moved on with life.
Yeah.
So, how do we You talked about projection of power through the seas. India not being a very expansive in nature. We've never been that place. We don't even have plans even today. If you talk about taking something from Pakistan, there are 3 people who say yes, and there are 6 people who say no. So we don't have that expansionism in our blood. Having said that, projection of power, as what comes out of what you're explaining to us, is an important thing. One, how do we do it? And two, is are we at the right time for this activity to start?
Yeah, I'll answer the second question first. We, as a rising nation, this is the time when we have to really start thinking maritime, because power projection is all about through the maritime thing. Now, the first question, how do you do it? Okay, now look at the map. Look at the seas. The seas are like deserts, okay? Devoid of resources, everything. Now, when you look at the mechanized warfare which was fought in the Second World War or in deserts, in the deserts you always look at pivots of maneuver. What are pivots of maneuver? You go there, you drop base, you organize yourself for defense. That's your logistics base. That's the place from where you go strike out and come back. You don't capture the entire desert. Similarly, the seas are liquid mechanized warfare, liquid deserts. So here, you want to dominate the seas, you need bases, islands. So these islands become bases or ports. You need bases and ports and land, and you dominate the seas. This, I mean, let's take this. You have a base in Sri Lanka. You can dominate an entire area around Sri Lanka.
Correct.
But then what does that base constitute? The base constitutes protection first, security, an ability to carry out your maintenance and logistics, an ability to base your troops there, ability to carry out training. You need to have the ability to carry out air ops from there. You need to have the ability to store your ammunition and your base material. Everything. So it's just not a port. That's the difference. A port has only berthing facilities and all that, but a base is much more complex. So you need bases. So if you have a base here, say in Andaman Nicobar, and you have a base here, virtually you control the entire sea here. Similarly, you have a base here and a base in Lakshadweep, you control the entire area here. How are Americans controlling it? Americans had the base here. I mean, Digogasia. It's not seen on this map. Somewhere here. And Guam, somewhere here. With these two bases, which are complete sovereign territory of USA. Because how they got it is a different story. That's history. They control the seas. They have their air, everything. You can't go and attack them. And if you do attack them, they have the ability to defend themselves. Right? You do power protection and control through these bases. Unless, of course, we have this advantage of having a major presence in the Indian Ocean by the way our geography has given it to us and our island territories. You have the ability to control everything. You look at China, this convex shape of China, right? You have Taiwan just outside this. It's unsinkable aircraft carrier, as MacArthur said long back, right? And with this, virtually every part of China you can access.
Yes.
Vulnerable. He is vulnerable at his doorstep. He can't. This side is South Korea and Japan. This side Philippines. And here you've got this. And that is why he is developing these bases here. So that he can do control and project his power into South China Sea. Until such time he doesn't do that, he can't come out. Right? Okay, but I want to highlight something else. I'll take you back to the land, right? I did say that you have to look at the enemy's strategy, his environment, and his terrain, isn't it?
Yes.
Look at China, because that is a very important part of his strategy, which we have to understand. This is Han China. Okay. Now, his point of contact with India is along Tibet and Xinjiang. Both are unstable regions, half of China, without his population. People say that he's Hanizing Tibet. But for the past 10 years, if you see the statistics, the number of people Hans have not increased. A lot of people who are Han in Tibet come for projects and development projects, and most of them are in cities. They are not in the hinterland. And this is facts. This is from international statistics. So this area is still alien. It doesn't give him any economy. Nothing. He gets nothing. He has to keep pumping stuff into that. Now, this is 3,000 kilometers away, right? And both are problem for an uprising here. Now, if you go and handle him here, what happens to him? Can he ignore it? He can't. So, if you have, say, 3 divisions here, you are posed a threat to him. Will he ignore you and go away anywhere else? He cannot. So, he has to match these 3 divisions here with his own 3 divisions, or 4 or 5 or 6, whatever. That's what he did in Eastern Ladakh in last year. Now, the moment he has his focus here, how much can he focus here?
True.
So, when you say that India has a continental orientation, as much as India has a continental orientation, you're forcing China to have a continental orientation. If you put 2 divisions here and China doesn't react, Pakistan will react. They'll say, yeah, if this chap doesn't go this side, he'll go this side. So Pakistan will say, I'll put 2 divisions here. You also put 2 divisions here, so we have to hold India. You will hold both of them. And that's what you did now.
Correct.
You held both, you fixed both. Right. Now, another point. When you put your focus against the continent here, this continent, he's at his weak spot, Tibet. We have not utilized Tibet, that's a different story. The day you start utilizing Tibet, his costs will go up and he can let go of Tibet now. I mean, just imagine a superpower has to let go of so much land, or he's an uprising, he'll no more be a superpower.
Yes.
Can he leave that? Now, what happened in the last year? At one point of time, Eastern Ladakh, we had 3 to 4 divisions across each other. There were 2 aircraft carriers here. China was bottled up here and here. In between, there were floods and famines and what have you. He could do nothing. Isn't that a strategy?
Correct.
So, you saw an overall strategy, a maritime strategy from USA and a continental strategy from India. Again, I'll take it one step further. When people tell Quad should have a maritime orientation, I don't agree with it. Quad should again have a balanced orientation. It is not necessary for Quad people to come and fight here. India can do that. But India, by doing that, will enable the other 3 people to bottle up China here and contain China. We have to contain China, nothing else. And of course, you're still, your navy is still free here. Okay, so you have to look at it a little more holistically.
Sure.
right? So this is what I thought I'll put across to you when you know the issue of how do you do maritime control and how do you, what is the relationship between maritime strategy and continental strategy, and the strategy has to be against the nation, not against, you know, it's not the form which matters, it's the substance which matters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to just hold you for this, if I may. What you're trying to say is basically not just we can't be over dependent on either the continental shelf or the maritime domain. There has to
I
be
agree with you. A
a
mixture of
factor
both.
of interest projection or power projection within the sea,
Yeah.
and a building of our capabilities on land,
Yeah.
which is where we've been receiving threats from for centuries. So I think that's a very very interesting observation that has been made by you. So over dependence on our resources to be pushed into the sea would be a pretty much a mistake at this moment.
No, it's not, I won't say mistake.
Over dependence, sir.
Yeah, these grand strategies in the
Yes.
maritime domain and all that, you know, are imbalanced. Just
Yeah.
because you have a grand strategy in the maritime domain, to expect that China will do nothing against you is not this thing.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I don't see any grand strategy where China will react so badly to you in the maritime domain that he'll pull out from Xinjiang and Tibet. In fact, it might be the other way around.
Other way around, yes.
Right? If you try something in the sea, he will do something in the land. So
Yeah.
it's a two-way door. You have to, right?
So,
And your aim, put it, is would you like to go all the way there when he does like a revolving door, or you let him come here and also say you come this side, you stretch him this side 3000 and this side 3000. In the north along the land also is stretched for 3000, on the south also is stretched for 3000 kilometers into the Indian Ocean. So at the end he might not be strong at both places, whereas you are strong on land and on sea nearer to your own homeland. Okay, and he's sandwiched between your Andaman Island and the. So I think we have to think holistically. My view is, I mean, I'm not against the maritime orientation. We should be maritime oriented. We need to develop maritime power. No doubt about it, but balance.
So,
yeah.
So this grand strategy business is actually not a very.
Grand strategy has to be.
Yes.
Grand strategy has to be two ways.
Can't be a single one. So,
yeah.
Looking at this map, one can't help but noticing an opportunity for India to also create a 2.5 front sort of a game for China. One is, of course, the land. Second is the maritime, with the help of the God. And the third front, the half front that you mentioned about India, is the internal security part. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, he's got 5 instabilities, which I have written about. Xinjiang, Tibet is what I've highlighted here, but he's equally got Taiwan. He's also got Hong Kong, which is a problem. He's also got Mongolia, which is a problem. So you must create that half front. And that is what America is doing. The Xinjiang sanctions and all that, that half front is being created. Tibet also, they've put a special coordinator.
Yes.
So what does that half front do? That half front makes China look inward. So it commits itself inward. When the moment there's an inward commitment, its external habit of being a porcupine will go down.
So before I talk about Indian maritime strategy, I'd like you to explain to me, as well as all the viewers that are going to watch this video, is what exactly is the Chinese maritime strategy at this moment?
Okay. China, actually, if you look at it, I read I consider it a real classic piece by Robert Kaplan, which is called China's Two Ocean Strategy, right? And I'll just explain this to you in a nutshell. What is China's Two Ocean Strategy? Firstly, his two ocean, about one is the Western Pacific, that is this area, right? And then is the Indian Ocean, which this area, which we all know. Okay. So, what is his interest in this? I mean, what is the whole story in this? In the Western Pacific, his idea is to control the Western Pacific. To control the Western Pacific, he needs to break the first island chain. The first island chain, South Korea, Japan, there's Senkakus, which are here, Taiwan, Philippines, Paracels, which are here. This is the first island chain. The second island chain is Guam and rear end of Philippines and Indonesia, and that's when he breaks out into the Philippine Sea and West Pacific. Now, what has he been doing in this? He's trying to take over Taiwan. I've explained to you the significance of Taiwan being an unsinkable aircraft carrier in this convex shape, which from here he can hit here, wherever, radially. But this is South China Sea, which he had no control over. Now, this is where Paracels were. I'll show you the next slide, then you'll understand. This is the Paracel Islands, where he's built artificial islands and he's taken control over this. Now he's trying all his stunts in Philippines, along the Spratlys, all where he's sending fishing vessels and militia, stationing them on these reefs here and all that. So he doesn't have control here. He's got control of this place. So this part of South China Sea is already got control. He's now getting control of this. Then he will try to get control of this area. Once he gets Philippines off the US grid, and then he can think of coming here. Right? Okay. So he's first getting control of the South China Sea fully. That's where he is. Simultaneously, he is trying to get hold of Taiwan. Okay. Okay. So once he breaks this first island chain and he gets the South China Sea and he breaks Taiwan, Taiwan is critical to him. Then he can think of Guam and beyond. Then his open access to the Pacific is there. Now let's look at the Indonesian part, Indian Ocean part. Now Kaplan has argued that today China wants his Indian Ocean strategy revolves around protecting his slocks. That is oil flow from the Gulf through the Malacca Straits to his mainland. The second phase will be power projection. When China is strong enough that he can enter the Indian Ocean region. And that will only happen when the South China Sea is in full grip. Okay. Now let's look at it from the Indian Ocean. What does he want in Indian Ocean? He wants an entry, multiple entry. Now, right now his entry is only through the Malacca Straits. He wants an entry into the Indian Ocean, multiple entries. So that is why he's trying at Gwadar, a naval base there. He's got a base at Djibouti, though it's a little offset. He can use Karachi, which is a Pakistani base as of now, and that's the only base he's got. Gwadar is not a base as such, but it will develop into a base. He's got Hambantota as a port. He's not a base again. He's got a port. He's trying for a port at Kaikapyu through the China-Myanmar economic corridor, and he's also coaxing Bangladesh to give him a port. So his entry into Indian Ocean, and of course this Kra Isthmus he's trying to put across so that he can get through. It's a different thing. He'll head into, whichever way he does, he'll head into Andaman Nicobar. That's a different story. That will come to later. So he's trying multiple entries. This is a part of power projection. He's doing multiple entries at this point. As he's consolidating here, he's consolidated his slocks. So his multiple power entries are Gwadar, Karachi, Bangladesh, Chittagong, Kaikyapu, right, Kra,
Mm.
so that he can get over the Malacca dilemma. So, entry. Then he is looking at bases. That's your famous string of pearls. He's also tried Maldives through the debt trap route. Ambatonta is got. He'll develop it. I mean, he intends to develop it in future. And then probably he's really got a base in Djibouti.
Mm.
And he'll try something on the east coast of Africa. And the vehicle for him to do that is the BRA. Okay. So when he is able to do all this, then he controls Indian Ocean. Till then, he doesn't have control over Indian Ocean. Right? This is a two-ocean strategy. Your strategy should be to disrupt this.
Mm.
I mean, let me put it very simple. It doesn't matter what he has. Like I said, would you like to go and fight him in South China Sea and stretch yourself 3,000 kilometers, or let him come here and hit you? You hit him. So that he stretches 3,000 kilometers this side and on the land. Your strategy should be to make him suffer. It doesn't matter whether you do it on the sea or the land. I could get it done. India first. Right? So this is his. Any questions on this?
Well, this is very interesting. So one thing that comes out of here is, again, he's following the US basis strategy to create his, hotspots, if I may put it that way.
Correct. Yeah. Without bases, you can't control the seas.
And it also shows, when you explain the South China Sea dilemma that he's going to, I'd call it a dilemma, especially after this one talk, is because it shows his vulnerability in that area. It doesn't show his strength at the moment. It actually shows that he's not very, very confident of that area. That's one of the reasons he's pushing forward.
Yeah, see, till such time Taiwan is not taken, Taiwan is his focal point. That's his key area and his key vulnerability. Everyone says, Taiwan he'll take over day after tomorrow and all that. But the fact is that he's not been able to cross this 160 kilometers and take this island of 160, 170 by 170 kilometers. It's been 70 years. He's talking of it today. Will he succeed? Can he risk success? Or will he be risking failure? Look, Taiwan is not a walkover. Okay. And what will be the effect of war on his economy?
Yes.
The pandemic is still alive. Let's not forget the pandemic issue. Right?
A lot of factors.
Yeah, a lot of factors.
So I think at the end of this discussion, not the last topic, but I think it's falling at the end due to the whole way that we've taken this through. But it is now time that you explain to us what now should be the Indian strategy in the maritime domain. There are people talking about a third aircraft carrier. There are people talking about, as you mentioned, India doesn't have a very good strategy, the grand ocean strategy, and so on and so forth. In your opinion, what should be the Indian strategy in the oceans?
Right. I'll give you this maritime strategy, and basically this is against China. It's China oriented.
Yes, of course.
This is my own concept. People will have difference of opinion with this. And people will say, look, who is this Pongo who's talking of maritime strategy? That's also okay for me. But I look at it this way. First aspect of your maritime strategy is tie down PLA in Tibet. It is synergistic. Your army and navy have to be synergistic with each other. That's the first cornerstone of Indian strategy. Sure. This maritime strategy is not anything, it's an Indian strategy. I'm not talking about what Indian army will do in the continental part of it. That's a different story, right? That I leave because we're not talking of that with.
Sure.
So first and foremost, the more PLA is tied down in Tibet in some form or the other, the better it is for you. Stretch him 3,000 kilometers. I mean, people will say, oh no, PLA is this, PLA is that. Well, PLA is not that and this. we've seen the limitations of PLA in Eastern Ladakh. I mean, we know that their spearhead is blunt. Tactically, they're weak. Okay. So they can't do that much. And they can only mass troops. At the moment they mass troops there, there is somewhere else it's not there. Most importantly, if you keep China oriented to his continental orientation, he cannot transform into a maritime power. What if we have to understand his transformation principle? He's transforming his PLA into a naval force. He's cutting down PLA and increasing his navy. If you can reverse that, he will not be a maritime power. I mean, isn't it simple? आदमी तो वही है यार, इधर लड़ ले उधर लड़ ले, बात बराबर. So you have to put a brake on his naval expansion, and that can be done only through the land. Don't let him off the land. Okay. Then the second thing is, you have to be IOR centric. Let's not think of going into South China Sea and all. IOR is your guard. तुम्हारा फोर्ट है, उसको संभालो, उसको तगड़ा करो. This grand strategy of going into South China Sea and putting your flag and all is fine. Yeah, you can go for port calls and presence and all that. You're not strong. You don't have that finances. You don't have X, Y, Z, and for many reasons. So form alliances. I mean, we've already started that story. Quad.
Yes.
Just think. You have a huge landmass called India with a strong navy, and you have American US Navy sitting here in Guam here and Digogasha here. Aren't you control this entire area? And then you throw in Japan and Australia into the mix. And don't forget, USA has got pacts with Japan, South Korea, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, understandings. All their officers go and train in USA. So you form alliances. You form understandings, if not alliance, partnerships, understanding. France has got a lot of interest here. France has got sovereign territory here.
Yes.
Right? UK has interest here. So develop that, your strategy in sync with others. So instead of having your own independent strategy, think in sync with others. It doesn't mean you give up any programmer, mind you. You develop your own strength so that you can do everything independently in days to come. I mean, again, for one moment, I'm not going to say that, no, scale down Navy. That should be the most stupid thing to do. We must improve our Navy as per our plans. Yeah, your priorities might be different. That's a different story. Okay. Our aim should be to deny bases to China, whether diplomatically or physically. You threaten his locks. Both these you do. What I said, his Indian Ocean strategy is keep locks open, enter Indian Ocean, develop bases. Deny that. Exactly mirror him. For example, I read somewhere one Chinese analyst who said he considers Andaman Nicobar Island as a iron chain. He says the moment that Andaman Nicobar is developed, China's options are almost closed. That's his view. People say, oh, it's too conservative, but then it's a view. And he's right. I'll go with him because if you look at this Andaman Nicobar, I'll just go back. You look at this Andaman Nicobar Islands, right from here to here, whether he comes to Kaikapu or the Kra or the Malacca, or he gets some facilities in Bangladesh, if this is strong, anyway your thing is strong, diplomatically and through land and this and that, you can affect him. Okay? Where will he go? And then he'll come here. No, this is where this Kaikapu is. So he'll come through the old Lido Road and come down Myanmar. All insurgency affected area. Your land thing will start working. You use the same Nagas to say, yaar, mere ko chodo, usko lagao. So it's not easy. At the same time, we have to think differently. Develop synergies between your continental and the maritime domain.
Mm.
If you want to deny entries, you have to have diplomacy. You have to have continental orientation. You have to have maritime orientation. All three, right? Then, of course, you need to develop a strong maritime compact. I mean, this is something which I don't see many people talk of.
Mm.
Everyone says, I want a carrier, aircraft carrier. Fine, you get an aircraft carrier. We need a third aircraft carrier. There's no doubt. A country like India needs a third aircraft carrier. Let me put it up front. But you also need space-based assets. You want to control this huge 4,000 kilometers of ocean. You need space. Are we developing that? And this is where we are strong. Are we developing the necessary synergy between our armed forces and ISRO and our space?
Mm. Mm.
You might not militarize space, but you must exploit space. And we have a good space program. It's a strength.
Yes.
What about air? Air is your fastest control over this expanse of sea. And for that, you have island territories. This is the last one. Island territories. This island territory and this island territory. I mean, let me also put something else in this thing. You know, the distance between mainland China and this South China Sea Islands about 300 odd kilometers, 200, 300 kilometers. Exactly, I don't know. And he's struggling. He's created islands, all that. You know what the distance between us and Lakshadweep? 300 kilometers or so. Same. He's put his entire country daw pe laga ke, he is making islands there. Why can't we develop Lakshadweep? And of course, the Britishers left this as a legacy to us, Andaman and Nicobar Island chain. We must develop it. Then, of course, you have the naval component, could be surface vessels and subsurface vessels. You need all these in balance. The only thing is sequencing them as to what you can afford today, what will be more efficacious, and what you can put on ground at what time frame. And of course, it has to be related to the threat. If you can't, I mean, I'll put it this way: if I can develop this island territory with a lot of air facilities, and in Lakshadweep also, if I can develop, I mean, someone might turn around and say it can't be done. Don't talk out of your head. That's a different story. Yeah, fine. You're doing also something with Seychelles, right? You can use Maldives also. Develop these, and you have aircraft operating out of this. It offsets your aircraft carrier requirement for some time. You still have 200. The debate is about the third, not the second, right? So, and if you can get submarines in this time frame, which in a faster time frame, if you can do, fine. If you can't, then it's a different story. But I think, I mean, it's a matter of prioritizing as per your capability and your financial capability, and the threat, and the synergies which you can develop. Look, if the aircraft carrier is your priority, we must have it. There are no two ways about it. But go through this. I have not added hybrid threat in this. Huh?
Yeah, of course.
I have not added the hybrid. You can generate hybrid. Look, we are a nation. Okay, it doesn't matter what I use, whether I use a slingshot or a nuclear missile. I have to sort out my enemy. As simple as that.
Correct.
Anything is fair. And I've also not factored that in. long range capabilities.
Hmm.
I mean, when I said I didn't factor it in, I've not. I've this part of air. Air is
Correct.
manned
Yes,
and
sir.
unmanned.
Yes, sir. Yes. Hmm.
So this is where it is. Uh,
Yeah, personally, I think it's an eye opener with regards to the discussion that has been going around to, spend tons and tons of money into developing an ocean fleet, which I'm not against personally. But I guess there are other ways of augmenting our power projection within the oceans as well. So I think this whole discussion with regards to continental versus maritime should become continental balancing maritime or maritime balancing continental, either ways.
I will put it this way. Yeah, I think you're right. The right word with synergizing.
Yeah, of
I
course,
will
yes.
synergizing the maritime and the continental
So,
strategy.
so.
Synergistic approach.
And
What we need, we should have. As simple as that.
so,
But what we need, we should come to it logically.
mm,
The
sorry.
fact that till now, what we needed was a force which was to defend India
Mm,
as per our constitution. I mean, I go back to that vital interest first
yes, yes.
slide.
Mm,
We have that capability. There is no way that we don't have that capability today. We can defend India and we can take care of our people. Yeah, we might have things a little short and all. I've always felt that India has the capability of defending itself. Does India have the capability of projecting power? That is a question. That is what we have to answer. And people say, "Oh, India is not a power. We have so many problems. We have really malnutrition, poverty." That's fine. I know that. Yeah, our economy will grow. It is projected to grow.
mm.
And I am not talking of day after tomorrow and 2 years hence and 5 years hence. When China can talk of 2050, why are we not talking of 2050?
Exactly, yes, sir.
If you project yourself in 2050, China will be a declining power by 2050.
Mm,
Why are we not talking of that? Where will India be in 2050, and what should our strategy be then? I mean,
mm.
think long term. Everyone say, "Oh, China wala aa gaya, or he's 10 foot tall and will collapse." Sorry, he is not 10 foot tall. He's full of weaknesses. You have a guy who's so weak can do so much. We are strong, and if we are not doing something, there's something wrong with the way we are thinking.
Absolutely, yes. Another
Right?
observation with regards to your maritime strategy you mentioned is basically what you're saying is Chinese are building bases is because of their own threats and projection of power that they plan to do. So should we. I mean, that's a very
Yeah,
simple, that's the threat, that's the major threat that you've got today. Pakistan today is a nuisance more than a threat, apart from their nuclear arsenal and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Right? But the main threat is from China. I mean,
Yeah,
so,
our main threat is from China, and luckily we have the capability to build our bases.
mm,
Unlike China, which has to struggle to make a base, it has to struggle to get into the Indian Ocean,
mm,
right? We don't have that. And let me also put it this thing: in my view, the Indian Ocean is more important than the Pacific Ocean.
mm,
This is my personal view. Economically, maybe the ASEAN, Japan, South Korea, that belt is more prosperous.
mm,
But this has got more implications. This is the place, the Indian Ocean is where the East and the West meet. You have West Asia, you have South Asia, you
mm.
have East Asia, Africa, and the antipodes. Everything is encompassed here.
Correct.
And the Antarctica, energy rich tomorrow.
Mm, mm.
The South. Antipodes is the Australia, right? So the Indian Ocean touches a large part of our thing. And Africa is where tomorrow's contestation is going to take place,
Yes.
right? Young nation, young continent.
Some would say it's already
And there's a,
started.
yeah, then you have this huge problem of the Middle East. It's not gone away.
Mm.
All this is part of Indian Ocean. Indian Ocean. It's not part of. So Indian Ocean are able, and we have interest in Indian Ocean. You have your own slots are there. Your
Correct.
own energy dependence is on Indian Ocean. How can you go to South China Sea? Your major payoffs are going to be around us, near us. We don't have to extend ourselves. We need to flock together and hold together and progress.
Mm. I think in that way, the Chinese are going very step by step. They're first strengthening the first circle, as they call it, the 9-line
Yeah,
and so on and so forth. And then they
yeah,
want to
yeah.
expand.
Slowly expand. They're not going to expand in a hurry. They can't come here in a hurry. Like I said, they finished off with the Parasols. Now they're looking at Spratlys. Then they'll step by step. The next 3, 4, 5 years, that's going to play out.
So basically, sea is where a
Yeah.
lot of the action will take place, and we have a great opportunity with our land connection to China to actually open up another pressure point.
And this is the time for us to develop Andaman Nicobar very strong. Make it that iron chain which those chaps fear. Are we doing that? I mean, you could have n number of aircraft carriers there.
Yeah, absolutely.
At least cost.
South Nicobar.
And you're developing that area. You are developing people there. After all, they're also people, our people.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think this has been a wonderful, and it's an eye-opening discussion for a lot of us who, we always, since kid, Army, Air Force, Army, Air Force, Army, Air Force. Our Navy, good ships, the attack on Karachi, and that's the end of this thing. We've never been told about power projection and so on and so forth. People don't write about this. It's probably not as glorious, but it is as important as anything else. Thank you for bringing out this beautifully crafted flow in today's discussion, sir. And I think people are going to really enjoy watching this. And I would say this is it's a very unique way of thinking, where we are actually going to say that this is how we should project ourselves within the oceans. At the end of it, it is the Indian Ocean.
Yeah, it's the Indian Ocean, and it's the only ocean which bears the name of a country, Indian Ocean. No other ocean bears anyone's name. And it is historic, and it's something which we should be proud of.
Thank you for joining me today, sir. Wonderful discussion. And I hope, again, catch up with you one more time for another topic, another day.
Thanks a lot. I enjoyed myself.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.